Comic Book Savant, episode 303.
I know this. This I know. All that I have, all that is me, resides inside my poetry. And every time I write a rhyme, it might be the line that sets mine free. And also, I know that I don't...
Welcome to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This week, my episode is going to be based all around Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. It wasn't what I originally planned to have on the slate for this episode. It was going to be a Cutting of the Stack episode, but I totally forgot that the digital release was coming out today. So I decided to go ahead and check the movie out to see how much it differed from the theatrical cut of the movie, and to give my opinions and actually do a review of the Ultimate Edition compared to the theatrical version that we all originally seen up until this point. So that's basically the crux of what this episode is going to be about. Before we get into that, as always, I'd like to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. If you have a moment, go check them out at comicspodcast.com. That's comicspodcasts.com. It's a great hub or portal to go to find more comic book related podcasts. You've seen me over the past few months give a shout out to particular podcasts that I've collabed with over the years in doing the show that are all also members of the Comics Podcast Network as well. So if you've tried any of those shows and you've enjoyed them, based on my recommendation, definitely go over to the Comics Podcast Network. It's tons more. Those are just some of the podcasters that are near and dear to me because they helped me, over the years, and we've helped each other. But it's a ton more than the ones that I named over at the Comics Podcast Network. So definitely have a moment, check it out, see if you can find another podcast if you enjoy this one or others that I've talked about just as much over there. And last but not least, I have to give a shout out to the sponsor for the episode, which is nstocktrades.com, one of, if not the best place to go online to get your collected editions, your masterworks, classic hardcovers, omnibus, absolute editions, deluxe hardcovers, anything of that nature that's a collected edition from any of the top companies. In Stock Trades is one of the best places to go on the internet to find them. Again, if you place any orders $50 or more and you're a U.S. customer, you get free shipping. If you're an international customer, you still get the great savings, which ranges from 35 to 42 up to 50% off on their deals of the week. Definitely check them out. But again, the free shipping for the orders $50 or more are only for U.S. customers. International customers, you still get the great deals, but you just don't get the free shipping. But they have some of the most competitive and cheapest rates you're going to find anywhere around. So definitely, if you have a moment, check out nstocktrades.com. Let them know that the Comic Book Savant sent you over. Try them. Let me know if you tried the service based on my recommendation and based on their sponsorship and you enjoyed them. Definitely, tweet me, email me, and let me know for sure, because I always like that feedback when it comes to that. So, jumping into this, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, the Ultimate Edition. I did a review a few months back when this was released earlier in the year, and I didn't love the movie. I didn't hate the movie. For my rating scale, I gave it a date night rental, which is just shy of a must buy, which is probably like is equivalent. Date night rental is between like a 7 and an 8. I probably would have judged the theatrical cut more like a 7.5 on if you're looking at a numerical rating on the movie that I gave at the time. That's basically on my rating scale, what I kind of recommended it as if you convert my rating to numerical. And I felt like it was poorly executed on a lot of fronts, but I thought it was still a lot of good stuff there, and I thought a lot of characters were underutilized. But before I get into in-depth in the analysis of it, again, this is still directed by Zack Snyder. The writers on the movie were David S. Goyer and Chris Terrio, and the breakdown is as follows. Fearing the actions of Superman is left unchecked. Batman takes on Superman while the world wrestles with what kind of hero it really needs. With Batman and Superman fighting each other, a new threat, Doomsday, is created by Lex Luthor. It's up to Superman and Batman to set aside their differences, along with Wonder Woman, to stop Lex Luthor and Doomsday from destroying Metropolis. In the cast is Henry Cavill as Clark Kent and Superman, Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne and Batman, Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, Amy Adams as Lois Lane, Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, Jeremy Irons as Alfred, Holly Hunter as Senator Finch, Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White, and Diane Lane as Martha Kent. The first thing that's very noticeable in this ultimate cut, and this is going to be a spoiler, definitely a spoiler-tastic podcast. So if you haven't seen the Ultimate Edition and you're seeking out, you can get it on all the digital fronts, iTunes, all that kind of stuff. If you want to get it digitally, I don't know when the actual physical Blu-ray release comes out. I went over to digital when it comes to all my movie stuff a while ago. So it was midnight. Midnight it became available. I got it immediately and checked it out. So the most glaring thing and the most notable addition was the first scene of the movie, the whole Africa scene. It was a lot more to that scene that was shown in the movie, which became very crucial to the overall storyline of the movie. It was way more involving the CIA. Certain things you still don't understand about the scripting, and I'll say this about the movie. It is definitely an improvement over the theatrical cut, and I'll get into more specifics why a little later, but it's still flaws within the script. So by no means this is a perfect movie. This is a movie that would never get, a must-buy 10 out of 10. You know what I mean? Because like I said, it's still a range within those rating scales in which I give. But I generalize or condense my ratings down to a level of recommendation. More so getting into numerics, because I see so many reviewers, get caught up on. Sometimes they don't look at their past of the way they judge movies, and they give out numeric ratings, and then it gets thrown back up at them later. So I mainly don't get into the specifics of it, but getting more in my review scale is based on the enjoyment level. You can equate it, because people always will, ask me, like if my friends ask me, they ask me like, what would you give this movie out of a 10? So then I can easily equate it, but that scale is sliding, because like I said, you can take my 5-prong, basically a 1 through 5 rating scale, and then equate it to a 10-point scale if you want, and I can get more into specifics and be able to dial in and tell you specifically what I feel and why I feel that way, and how I would grade it, and I try to take as much into account before I put down anything or try to put this episode together. I went back and looked at my notes from what I reviewed in the theatrical cut, and to see how it changed my opinions and what things, and I literally, modified my notes based on the notes I took down off that theatrical edition. And I feel like this movie, with the additions they made, strengthened the movie, and it made the movie flow so much smoother. Like I got halfway through the movie and I had to pause it for a second, because I was just like, even though it's a longer cut of the movie, it doesn't feel that way when you're watching it because everything flows so fluidly, especially in the first act. It is so much smoother how you're introduced to the Africa scene, you're introduced to Superman, you're introduced to Batman, how you're introduced to the two main protagonists in the movie, and just the setup of the incident, which is really the African incident, is really the trigger point for all the other storyline on why the world is questioning Superman so much and why it is such a conflict or divisiveness on, his place in the world and his actions. Of course, Bruce has from the prologue at the beginning of the movie, we understand why Bruce has a personal vendetta against him, because a lot of people, his employees, it had nothing to do with his business per se, more so that he lost a lot of employees, a lot of people that he was close to that were directly in his path when he fought Zod. So it was very personal to him. So then you base that off of the events in Africa, even bringing more of Superman's actions to the forefront and him being kind of set up and framed. You get to see that framing so much more, which the great thing about that scene is that it makes even though I'm still not 100% sold on Jesse Eisenberg's take on Lex Luthor, he will never probably be, my favorite Lex Luthor, but how dangerous and menacing he actually was is really cut out of the theatrical cut, which has made clear that Lex Luthor was very genius in the fact that he already knew exactly who everyone was, and he manipulated all the events we saw throughout the movie from the very beginning, from that very first Africa scene to the very end when Superman dies. Everything that happens in this movie is manipulated and orchestrated by Lex Luthor. Was he still kind of schizophrenic and jumpy? It's less notable with removing those jarring, rough cuts out of the movie where it jumps around. They resequence things, and it's not just one or two segments that they add. Like this 30 minutes that they added extra is just from the Africa scene. It's a lot of scenes that you notice as the movie goes along, that it's a 2 or 3 minute scene here. It's dialogue that was cut that makes a ton of difference in so many different sequences. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you would, to really get deep into how many edits were made and how it affects the movie, you would probably literally have to watch both movies back to back with a notepad, and making super specific notes. And I still think you would miss a few things here and there, but you could feel it as you watched it, seeing that I've already seen the theatrical cut. I only got a chance to see it the one time, and then going back and feeling the difference in the relationships. I made a comment in my review of the theatrical cut. I felt like, Amy Adams was underutilized, Diane Lane was underutilized, Jeremy Irons was underutilized. But in actuality, in seeing the actual longer cut of the movie, you see that Jeremy Irons was used extremely well. I felt the chemistry between him and Ben Affleck, but you saw more of it, and just the few scenes and dialogue between them were extended just enough where you saw that Alfred was really disapproving of Bruce's actions and made it be known, and that maybe for the first time ever in their lives that they truly had a point of confliction between the two people, and how far gone that Bruce was based on. I feel, and it's not touched on as much, is that Bruce had been in dark place already because of the loss of Robin. And I think when he lost his employees, that totally pushed him over the edge. And it's so much more. A lot of scenes, they cut a lot of Superman material from this movie. We heard a lot of different reports during the production of the movie that it was one cut that the studio gave a standing ovation to when they saw the cut of the movie. Then we got the theatrical release. I think this was the cut that they were very excited about, but I think ultimately the studio made decisions about the runtime of the movie. And it's a weird thing for me because, I'm soon to be 41. I'm not the target demographic anymore for things like video games, things that I love, video games and movies especially. Like, I'm not that target demographic anymore. In my 20s, and even in my 30s, we had Lord of the Rings. We had the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. We had all the Harry Potter movies. Those were 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie going experiences. Titanic, which was is the largest movie of all times, that was a 3 hour movie experience. Nowadays, so many movies that are popular are, more like 90 minutes. So, I think they made cuts based on what they felt like they needed to make the movie palatable for that demographic they were shooting for, a younger demographic than myself. And I feel like ultimately they hurt Zack Snyder because he took it on the chin for this. And I don't dislike Zack Snyder. I think he has room to grow overall, but this is a very capable movie in this cut. And I was watching something online right before the release came out, about an interview that he did, and he said basically in no uncertain terms this was the cut of the movie that he wanted to release theatrically, but it was out of his control. And you can tell that this was definitely more, it wasn't his fault. The problem with the theatrical cut had nothing to do with Zack Snyder. I think he was mandated to make cuts. They cut it try to cut it down to hit this magical, time frame that they wanted, and in the course of doing that, it just ruined the movie and the story that he wanted to tell us. Was it a perfect story? No, it was still flaws in the movies that you can really nitpick about, but the way the movie, as a movie-going experience, it flows so much smoother. Is it still I feel like the first and second act are definitely more cohesive, and things are set up and explained way more better and given a lot more depth in the characters and even the supporting characters, even though they're little, just like with Martha Kent, with Diane Lane. It's just a few pieces of scenes where Clark called her and asked her a few things and talked to her. The profound effect that Clark as a person, like in a funeral scene, that they show some of the people from the minister from Man of Steel and the guy that his high school friend that was shown in one scene at the end in the fight scene or what have you that he talks to. It was just a lot of just callbacks to Man of Steel even, and to show how important Clark was. Seeing Clark's journey as a reporter, as he's sent to do a fluff piece on the football game that Perry assigns him, that we see in the theatrical cut, but in this cut we see him go over to Gotham, but he's just hearing about Batman and this myth of Batman, and how Batman's now all of a sudden, like, he's recently been branding these criminals, and how it intrigues him, so he starts investigating it. And for all intents and purposes, at the very end of Man of Steel, that he just becomes a reporter. So this is 18 months later. It's kind of far-fetched, and here's a flaw again within the script, that he just is finding out about Batman when Gotham and Metropolis are so close together. Doesn't make sense to me why they ever did that, but hey, whatever. And from everything we saw, even from Man of Steel, and even with the montage scenes where they show him dragging the boat and him saving the missile, like, I can kind of buy into it because Superman clearly seems like in the 18 months since the end of Man of Steel to the beginning of this movie that he's been dealing more, not just with local issues, but global world issues and saving people all across the world. So in that sense, Batman is more all about Gotham at this point, that he overlooked it because he was more of a global hero than a local hero. So I can buy into it a little bit, but it's still far-fetched with him working at a newspaper right across the river from Gotham, that they never ran any piece about Batman, and he's just seeing all this now. That doesn't make sense, but suspension of disbelief. We're comic book fans. We thrive on it, so you just take it and go with it. But it was good seeing Henry Cavill, and I think Henry Cavill is solid. You saw him smile. You saw him in his relationship with Lois a little bit more. They put a lot of depth to him, and I like Zack Snyder's take on Superman, and I like Henry Cavill as Superman. He gives him a humanality that I think that's missed sometimes because, it's played up so much that he's this all-powerful being, but he still was raised by humans, and he even says it in the movie, like, he dies protecting his world. Earth is his world now. He was raised as such. Jonathan Kent is just as much his father as Jor-El is, so he is just as much a part of him as everything else, and I think he brings that to the table, and he does it. He does it with the right balance for me. It was other rumors that went around that the studio wasn't so enthused by Cavill's portrayal of Superman, and he liked the Batman stuff more, and that could be why they cut a lot of the Superman stuff. But really, my biggest thing is the whole storyline. The main storyline of this whole movie is Superman and his actions and how they affect the world in general and how they perceive him, and how, especially because he works in the news realm, being a newspaper reporter, that in this world nowadays with not just the newspapers, but televisions and 24-hour news networks and social media, and it's so easy for everyone to comment that how it affected him because he's plugged right into that world in the middle of it, and how it affected him and made him question his whole belief system in which he was founded, in which he was raised upon. And he went through a journey. They cut a lot of his whole story arc to help you understand why he was so upset and why he was so much in personal conflict with, was he doing the right thing? And you find out all of it was, a lot of it was manipulated. He didn't hurt the people in Africa. It was all a setup by Lex Luthor using KG Beast and his men, just like with Bruce, with him branding. This was another part that was really important to really show how much Lex really knew about everyone in their identities all along. Who invited, because this was not clear in the theatrical cut in the movie. How did all of a sudden this guy that's writing puff pieces on sports stuff and Clark, while he's building up a name for himself at the Daily Planet, gets even invited to the gala at the library or whatever that Lex was opening? Well, Lex sent the invite. He wanted him there so he could meet, Bruce Wayne. That was all manipulated by Lex Luthor. Why were, and he didn't go into this at all, but it's a whole nother subplot where the people that were branded by Batman weren't necessarily getting killed. Lex was making sure the people were getting killed. He had KG Beast hire people within to make sure that the people that had these marks, to make Batman look even more more menacing than what he was, to try to trigger the pictures that were sent, that were just inexplicably sent to him in the theatrical cut to Clark Kent, where we're seeing Judge, Jury, Executioner. Well, my God, who sent those? Well, it would be Lex. It goes deeper, even with the former Wayne Tech employee in the wheelchair that is looked to be a suicide bomber in the theatrical cut of the movie. You find out that he wasn't a suicide bomber. Lex set him up, and he wasn't planning on dying. And it was cool how that was revealed, because then it's a lot of scenes where they flesh out the subplot with Amy Adams, Lois Lane character, doing research based on the Africa event, and how her notebook had a bullet in it, and how she mailed it back to herself so it wouldn't get confiscated, so then she could investigate that path of the bullet. That wasn't too clear that she mailed it back to herself, and then she took the investigation a lot of different places. And the cutout scenes with Jenna Malone, where she was like a tech forensic person that was helping her with the investigation of the bullet, and later you find out that the wheelchair was booby trapped, and the reason why Superman couldn't see it was because it was lead lined. That was never brought up. It made it look like Superman didn't care, like he just didn't want to see the bomb. No, he couldn't, because the wheelchair was lined with lead. The guy wasn't trying to kill himself. He just was going out to speak against Superman. Lex gave him the chair, and he used him, and he blew him up, and he killed Mercy, and he killed Senator Finch. And I felt like Senator Finch was like I felt like Holly Hunter's character, though I love her as an actress, I thought she was useless. I still think her motivations were muddled, because she was speaking out somewhat harshly against Superman, but in her conversations with Lex, she knows that Lex is trying to get the kryptonite in there to try to do something negative to Superman, possibly even going as far as assassinating him, using it to carve a kryptonite bullet to try to kind of kill him. And I thought that was interesting. She saw him where he was coming from all the way. Did they need her, in there? Was a face to have? I just felt like you never knew, was she on the side of Superman or was she on the side against Superman? You just never knew. It just seemed muddled and muddy. I see like she was an obstacle, for Lex, because she was refusing his documentation to bring the kryptonite into the country. So that was an obstacle, and he had to take care of her, which he did by the explosion. Again, these are major plot points, and again, they all center around Superman and his actions from the first movie, and even more so this incident in Africa, which they cut out so much. It was, the CIA being there, and the Jimmy Olsen thing, and then it was a CIA group there watching, and they had drones, and they were going to blow everyone up with a drone, and Lois would have got caught up in the crossfire. Superman came, blew the drone up. Came in, stopped the main dictator, but the men were already killed because KG Beast and his men turned and killed everybody, threw their bodies in a pile, and he torched them with a flamethrower. Would seem more like Firefly than KG Beast, but what do I know? Because he used the flame that, and I thought that was interesting, that wasn't the only time, at the end when he had Martha Kent, he was going to burn her with a flamethrower. This seemed more like a Firefly thing than a KG Beast thing, but, maybe that was their old to kind of merge these two characters. I don't know. I mean, it just seemed a little weird that KG Beast always was trying to use a flamethrower or use a flamethrower. So that, they use a flamethrower, I guess, to kind of make it seem like Superman piled these bodies up and, I guess maybe use his I-beams to burn their bodies. And then it went deeper where the one African woman that we saw at the beginning of the movie speaking to the council, you find out that Lex threatened her and she lied and they gave her a script on what to read. And then she, before the whole Senate explosion, she saw that Lex had sent KG Beast to kill her. She decided to go back to Senator Finch and tell her the truth about everything. And it was a whole scene that they cut very awkwardly in the theatrical cut, where basically KG Beast finally tracks her down after she speaks to the senator, and he throws her on the railroad track so she can get hit by the subway train. So it was a lot of, Lex framed a lot of people, and it was like, when Lois was getting close to his trail and turning over stones, he had to do a lot of cleaning up. So you saw how differently the Wayne Tech employee apartment was when we seen him in the other scenes where he planted all this anti-Superman stuff. And that's where Lois finds out that, he wasn't trying to kill himself. He had just went grocery shopping. So it really showed her chops as this top-notch investigative reporter, where she's looking through the house and she, you can kind of, tell the police has already been through staging stuff and marking stuff off for evidence that needs to be bagged and taken away. And as she's looking around, she sees this fruit bowl. I didn't get it at first. So she sees the fruit roll and she grabs this orange and she's like feeling it in her hand and it feels firm, like, it was recently bought. Then it prompts her to look in the refrigerator, and he had a whole refrigerator full of groceries. And she was like, he didn't kill himself. Because to me, it felt like, to me in the theatrical cut, I felt like Lex just talked him into it, and he was like, F it, I don't have anything to live for. I'm going to kill myself and take as many people out with me as possible to make Superman look bad, which in all actuality, he had no clue. It was just, again, Lex manipulating another person, like he kind of manipulated Mercy, which was an employee of his, and he just promptly had her go in for show just to be cannon fodder and get blown up with everybody else, which made no sense to me. And that's, like I said, it's still problems with this movie, but it just shows how despicable and how very cold and calculating Lex really was throughout this movie and all the things that he did. The third act to me is still the biggest issue when it comes to Doomsday and how it was handled. The one thing that bothers me the most about the Doomsday issue that I felt like that could have been easily cleared up and straightened up is that I wish they just would have explained his power, before like them hitting it with a nuke and he coming back and all this kind of stuff, and they kept hitting it, and they're like, well, I guess we need to quit hitting it because all we're doing is making him more powerful. That it was explained in some way when Lex was on the ship, and that was another issue. Like I said, the third act is still a major issue on how much knowledge, did he learn from the ship. It could have been, said, we know that Zod, before he was trying to conquer, Earth, or save it, air quotes, from Man of Steel, that the ship was gathering all this data on Earth and humans and all that kind of stuff. And it could have been explained that the ship, it was one of those ships in that network, that they took the data, and when Lex did the override to create or regenerate Zod into, regenerate Zod into what became Doomsday, that they built this defense mechanism in his DNA that made him somewhat invulnerable, which he could adapt to these different things that would kill people, and it would just make him stronger. His body would adapt on the fly so he could regenerate, or for survivability purposes. Like, it could have been explained in some way that it was a defense mechanism for him, and that was coded in his DNA based on the data from the ship that it collected from Man of Steel. I think that would have been an easy way to explain it. I wanted to see more, but we know it was even a 4-hour cut of the movie. I would have liked to see everything that Lex had learned on the ship, because he just said, teach me, and I would have loved to see a little bit more of that. The deleted scene that was that went out on the internet, that Warner Brothers put out on the internet, like the weekend after the theatrical release came out, that like Monday they did that one scene where you see Steppenwolf and the three mother boxes. It would have been cool. They inserted that scene into it. It flowed so much better. But again, I would have liked to see more of Lex on the ship and what exactly he learned and how that conversation started. With Steppenwolf, we just see them, it being interrupted by the police coming in to get Lex. But, I don't know if they shot more, but I know it was another cut of the movie that was extremely too long. That was like about 4 hours. But I feel like overall, this movie, with the additional things that were cut for this Ultimate Edition, for me, it put it to a must-buy for the Ultimate Edition, where it was a date night rental for me. And like I said, breaking them down on a numeric scale, a must-buy, like I said, ranges from anywhere from a 10 to 8 for me. 10 to 9. I do it, like, break it down in 2-point segments. So, I feel like this movie is... I'm going to say it's about a 9 for me right now. Like, it's just touching that must buy for me. I feel like if you I think with iTunes, I think it's I didn't double check because I just wanted to see the ultimate cut. I'm pretty sure they said that, you get the theatrical release, the theatrical version, and the Ultimate Edition. You never need to watch the theatrical cut again, because after you watch the Ultimate Edition, it's the definitive edition of the movie. It's how the movie should have been released to begin with. Like I said, initially I probably would say I gave the original movie like a 7.5. It was a date night rental for me, which is right above a must buy. I feel like, this is definitely worth having in your collection, where with the theatrical cut, I don't know if I would say that's a movie, if you're a comic book fan and you collect comic book movies in your collection, that you need it to have. This one I feel like you do need to have when you watch it. It's one of those movies that you would watch over and over and over again. I don't know, and I think it's... I enjoyed it just like I enjoyed The Man of Steel. I think the rating moves more to what my rating was for Man of Steel for me. Because I think Zack handled Superman and Batman extremely well. It's just a different take on Batman. The murderous stuff, which is really explained, and a lot of stuff came out about the set visit, that that was Batman enraged and in a very dark place, and we're not going to see Batman killing a whole bunch of people in Justice League and then going forward. It was just showing that this was a story of redemption in a way for Batman as well. So this was the darkest of all these DC expanded universe movies we're going to see, him in his darkest place. It still bothers me with him killing people so easily, but again, it was him at a very dark point. So I think they're going to explain that, and you're going to see a much lighter version of Batman. They've already made that known from the set visits that were done to the Justice League set last week, and all the different reports came back about the different interviews with the director and the producer, and even Ben Affleck himself. So I feel very positive about that going forward as well. So definitely check this out. When it becomes available to rent it. If you were thinking about buying it, definitely buy this version, because it is, to me, the definitive version of the movie. As always, you can find me in the same places. You can find me on the website, which is comicbooksavant.com. You can find me on Twitter at comicbooksavant, also on Snapchat at comicbooksavant, and Instagram at comicbooksavant. Any of those places, if you have a moment, stop by iTunes, give the show a review. If you have any thoughts, comments, you can hit me up on any of the different social media platforms and send me a message, send me your thoughts, opinions, suggestions, any of the above. I'm always open to that. I appreciate your continued support. I will see you guys next week. I promise should be a Cutting the Stack episode. I got a few that I'm working on for Cutting the Stack that I'll do a little bit more comic reviews. I want to do one for DC Rebirth. I'm going to do one specifically on the issues that I've bought for that so far that I'm going to read through. I got a Star Wars theme one, and then I have a regular type episode that covers a little bit of everything that I'm reading. I've been getting back into reading so much. It's been so many movies out. Also down the pike, I'm going to have a Warcraft movie review coming up as well. I didn't know if I wanted to cover it or not, but I did because I really love the comic book that was done by DC under the Wildstorm imprint quite a few years ago that Walter Simonson was writing, and then his wife was helping him write it as well. I really enjoyed it. I can't remember how many issues it ran, but I'll talk about it more. I was doing some research on it. And I'll flesh that out in that episode. So that's, some of the stuff coming down the pike. Plus, we're coming up on August, which is the 10-year anniversary. So we'll do some, I'll put something together real nice for the 10-year anniversary show. I don't necessarily know what it's going to be yet, but I'm working on ideas for that. So definitely got a lot of good content lined up for you guys. So it's a lot coming down the pike over the rest of the hot summer months. And we still got Suicide Squad coming. So it's a lot more good stuff to come. So be on the lookout, and I will see you guys next week for another episode of Comic Book Savant. You guys take care, and I'll see you then.
And into lyrical wholeness. And I know this, and I know this. This I know, this I know.